Greece is a country LSE has long had connections to, with students but also with public affairs.
I think that we desperately need now places where Greece as a phenomenon, if you will, can be studied, and preferably studied independently of its connection with the classical past.
We think of the Greek contribution to Europe, to the West. Our definitions of those things owe so much to Greek history and the Greek inheritance.
Currently, significance far outweighed its size and its relative size even within Europe.
The Hellenic Observatory allows us to connect really great academic research to wider public discussions and the ways in which public policy gets shaped.
The Hellenic Observatory has two main aims. It's a research unit and it fosters a public events program. We're here at the LSE, so we focus very much on contemporary Greece from the perspective of the different social sciences.
The Greek government has a roadmap.
It's a hub, it's a very important hub for Greece, both for research, for dialogue, for understanding better Greek politics, economics and history.
It had and it has an impact in the academic world in Greece and in the political public debate.
And more importantly, it's a forum of exchange for younger scholars and for Europeans who want to learn about Greece. Greece is at the crossroads of three continents, and actually the interaction between the three civilizations is, in my view, what produced the greatness of Greece.
Now, is it an important country to study? Well, for those of us who come from there ethnically, it's the most important country to study.
We are seeking to serve three audiences. One, of course, is the academic community here at the LSE, to connect Greece to the interests of other scholars in different departments. Another is the diasporic community of Greece and Cyprus here in the UK, which has been very supportive of our activities. But we also naturally wish to speak to colleagues in Greece.
The Hellenic Observatory can play a more influential role in what we need in Greece, and this is the rational thinking and the rational argumentation. So we can link the British spirit with the Greek spirit.
I think the Hellenic Observatory should have a positive role in analyzing in depth the problems that we have faced so far, and also from a distance.
The debates, the discussions, the policy papers and so on that have been taking place or produced by the Observatory are very important, and I know that a lot of the decision makers in Greece they take this material very, very seriously.
For policymakers especially, history matters. If we don't learn from the past, we cannot influence the future.
It has played a positive role so far in analyzing critical issues for the Greek economy and society and the political system. So I think it has a bright future.
In more recent times, of course, Greece has gone global in the sense of the debt crisis and its rescue by the European Union.
The problems that Greece has faced before everyone else in the Eurozone were problems that those who founded the principles for the European Union and the institutions just didn't think about them. They didn't have any ways of dealing with them. And therefore Greece has become a case to study on how do we deal with this kind of problem within a monetary union.
There must be a focus, particularly during this time of crisis, a focus on the future of Euro and the future of Euro area. This is important for Greece, for Great Britain and for Europe as a whole.
It's an opportunity for us, therefore, to grow further, to fulfill a bigger mission. And the bigger purpose of the observatory is to not only enhance the international understanding of Greece as it is today, but also to engage and connect with our academic peers within Greece, to collaborate on research projects which see Greece as a case of something bigger, Greece as part of a comparison with other nations, with the European Union, etc.
My vision of LSE is that we're the most global research-intensive university in the world, and that means we connect research to public issues everywhere. Globalization is reshaping societies all over. It's creating challenges, it's offering opportunities, and the Hellenic Observatory helps us crystallize how that process works in Greece.
Dear alumni, dear friends, dear Minister Bambouridis and distinguished guests, on behalf of the Hellenic Observatory at the London School of Economics and the LSE Cyprus Alumni Association, I am delighted to welcome you all here this evening to the Leventis Gallery for our panel discussion on Cyprus and the technology transformation, breaking ground in the new economic and social environment. As you have seen from the video, the Hellenic Observatory is celebrating its 20-year anniversary this year. When we first started planning our program for 2016, we knew that we wanted to do something more to showcase the observatory's mission, not only in the UK, but also in Cyprus and in Greece. Tonight is the first of our 3 overseas events, to be followed tomorrow with a conference co-hosted with the University of Cyprus on interpreting the past, present, and future of Cyprus. And then we move to Athens, where the Bank of Greece will co-host a private conference on getting policy knowledge into government, the Greek and European experiences. All in all, a very busy and interesting week of events. So, moving on to our program for this evening, I will outline briefly the sequence of events. Our first speaker this evening is Mr. Michalis Kologasidis. Mr. Kologasidis was former Minister of Commerce and Industry between 1972 and 1976, and he was in the LSE graduating class of 1955. Mr. Kologasidis is one of the founding members of the LSE Cyprus Alumni Association and past president of the association. His talk tonight will be about the establishment of the LSE Alumni Association Cyprus, Reminiscences. Our second speaker this evening is Ms. Elena Constantinou. Ms. Constantinou is the head of asset management at UPM Limited and is a member of the LSE Cyprus Alumni Association board. Ms. Constantinou will speak about the LSE Alumni Association, strengthening ties between our members and making an impact on society. We then move on to the panel discussion, which this evening will be hosted and chaired by Professor Kevin Featherstone. Professor Featherstone is the head of the LSE's European Institute and the holder of the endowed Eleftherios Venizelos Chair of Contemporary Greek Studies at the LSE. He is also Professor of European Politics. Professor Featherstone will introduce each of our distinguished guests, who will be invited to speak for about 10 minutes, allowing you an opportunity at the end to place your questions. We plan to finish around 8:30, when you're all invited to join us in the outside patio area for a wine and canopies reception, where you will be able to network and meet our speakers. Before we start, I just want to add a few thank yous. Thank you firstly to our sponsors for this evening, Aon Hewitt, Eurobank Cyprus, and PwC Cyprus. We thank you all also for sponsoring tomorrow's conference with the University of Cyprus. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you to the organising committee of the Alumni Association, Stelios Kologasidis, Dimitris Georgiadis, Dagis Taoshanis, Michalis Saris, Elena Constantinou, and Eleni Arirou. Believe me, we have shared many emails the last few months. Thank you also to the Leventis Gallery for organisation of the venue, and a special thank you to Lugia, Despina, Dimitra and other colleagues, and to all the technical team for ensuring that everything is working perfectly. And I'd also like to add a thank you to Pavlos from the Pinakothiki restaurant for the catering this evening. So, without any further delay, please join me in welcoming our very first speaker for this evening, Mr. Michalis Kologasidis.
Thank you, Zmini. Fellow alumni and guests, allow me, first of all, to start by apologizing. Rather than talk a lot about the establishment of the LSE Alumni Association, which, in all honesty, I don't find a very sexy subject, and since Helena Constantinou will say something about it, let me go back a little bit to my time at LSE and conditions at the time. I was at LSE in 1952, many, many years ago, a long time before most of you in the room were even conceived. There was no way of preparing in Cyprus to get into the LSE. There were no schools to prepare for the then exams, matriculation and other exams. And I had quite a lot of difficulty in finding how to prepare for the various exams. There was also an LSE entrance examination, and there was a verbal examination as well at the time. I was lucky in that the only graduate of LSE before my time, Socrates Evangelidis, who was the only graduate even from the 1930s, was a friend of my father's, and he said that the only place for you to send your son is the London School of Economics if you don't want to get him involved in business colleges and some other second or third class institutions. So I started the strive to get into the LSE. I went to England. Don't forget that 51 was only 6 years after the end of the war. There was food rationing. I was issued a registration card, and I had to give to my landlady all my food coupons, except for sweet coupons, which went to my girlfriend. As you know, England, the UK won the war, but at least it looked at the time that it lost the peace. There was even bread rationing at the time. So it was quite a difficult time. But let's stick to LSE. In my mind, I was imagining a place with a campus and lawns all around it. And when I went there, I was shown 2 office blocks, the old building and the new building, and that was the LSE. I said, where are the lawns? They said, oh, Lincoln's Inn Fields over there. I went there, but there was nowhere to sit with my girlfriend and study. So that was the first disappointment. But the biggest disappointment of all was that everybody I met in England at the time, my father had sent letters to business friends telling about his son coming to England, and they were very kind to look after me at the beginning. Everybody was showing a glum face when I said I was going to the LSE. They were very polite, but not particularly enthusiastic about the LSE. They gave me the impression, or they wanted to say, that it was a breeding place for African revolutionaries and communists. And of course, the real truth was that in those times, we were still living the after effects of the Lasky trial. For most of you who don't know, Harold Lasky was a professor of political science at the school in the 1940s. He died in 1950, and also chairman of the Labour Party. He was a very outspoken person, and in the 1945 general election, speaking at the hustings in Nottingham, I think, he said that we'll get what we want, if not by democratic means, by revolution. This, of course, was what the conservatives wanted to hear. The following morning, all the papers were full of the Lasky pronouncements, and Lasky made the mistake of suing the Daily Express for libel. And all his pronouncements over the years came to the fore, and he lost the libel case because he had talked a lot about revolution at his time. So when I went there, it was still the time that the Lasky, the school was dealing with the after effects of the Lasky trial. Anyway, I managed to get into the school, and the first day was a Wednesday. I don't know whether it's still today. The term started on Wednesdays. 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, first lecture, Medieval Economic History with Miss E.M. Carus Wilson. I don't know whether any of you had met her. I will not be sexist and describe this, but she came, it was in the old theater, of course. She came on the stage carrying her bag. The room was full of young 18-year-olds who had come straight from school and wanted to hear something nice and welcoming. There was no welcome. There was no good morning. She deposited her bag next to on the rostrum and went on to talk about England in the 13th century, the manor house, the yeoman farmer, all completely foreign notions to a colonial boy of 18 from Cyprus. I thought there and then that I had come to the wrong place for the wrong cause. Fortunately, it turned out, I had burnt my bridges because I had refused Bristol and St Andrews, which were kind enough to offer me a post. So I stayed at LSE. I had a marvelous time at LSE. I learned a lot at the school. And I was also lucky. I was the only Cypriot in my first year. But I was lucky that there were a lot of Greeks from Greece, and mostly mature students, because either they were coming from a master's degree in law mainly, or they didn't know enough English, and although they were graduates from Greece, they had to come for a first degree to go for the BSc. So I was the 18, 19-year-old amongst a group of 25 or 30-year-olds. I was the Benjamin of the group. I was very well looked after, and they were very nice and really led me through the years in my school and contributed a lot to my memories of the school. When I came to Cyprus in '55, it was after the Oka struggle started. I was the only, one of two graduates of LSE at the time. People were pointing at me in the street, he's an LSE graduate. And although I felt very happy, at the same time I felt very lonely. And it was many years after that that the search of students to LSE started, and we were able in the late 70s or early 80s, I think, to start the alumnus, the Friends of LSE, as we were told at the time, association. This morning I had a meeting with Lindsay Turner of LSE Advancement, and we talked a lot about the school, the Alumni Association, and in the end she said, let me ask you something. All the people I interview, I ask a final question. In 3 words, what did you get out of the LSE? I had no hesitation in replying. I said, rerum cognoscere causas. It is really, probably to me at least, the only motto, school, college motto that really reflects on what the school does and what it teaches its students. I was very lucky to get there, and I'm very happy to talk about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please join me in welcoming our next guest speaker, Elena Constantinou.
I was going to say dear minister, but I think I just missed him. So, dear guests, dear speakers, dear friends from the school, dear LSE alumni. On behalf of the LSE Cyprus Alumni Association, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you at today's event, organized by the LSE Hellenic Observatory for the celebration of its 20th anniversary. It is really exciting to see so many LSE alumni faces in the room, and we really thank you for your support. We are a small group of LSE alumni friends getting together over coffee meetings in an effort to ignite the association and reach out to the great LSE alumni community in Cyprus. We are still in an infant stage, and we would like people interested to support our efforts to communicate with us. Hopefully, with your support, we should be able to develop a diverse, active, and informed local community, strengthening ties between the LSE Cyprus alumni members and at the same time building lifelong relations with the school. Historically, Cyprus and the London School of Economics and Political Science have forged a strong connection throughout the years, as a great number of Cypriot students study at the school. The first Cypriot student graduated in 1929, Mr. Evangelidis, and over the years, the number of graduates has been steadily increasing. People in Cyprus have been considering LSE as a great university to attend, gaining knowledge and skills, but most importantly, as a place where innovative thought is fostered and where academic research and views are not abstract, but rather deeply interrelated with the current affairs of the economy, the society, and the politics all over the world. The LSE Cyprus alumni carry great pride in studying at the LSE, recognizing that having been part of an exciting academic environment has impacted them for life. In the past, we have been organizing various events with keynote speakers, such as the LSE director, Sir Howard Davis, and the LSE alumnus, Sir Stangos Hagioannou. In addition, during the last 5 years, we have been actively supporting the annual Limassol Economic Forum in close collaboration with the IMH group, where many LSE professors have taken part. Now, going forward, our mission is to act as a hub between prospective, current, and past LSEians in order to share and nurture knowledge and ideas, and at the same time strengthen our ties with the school. There is a number of initiatives that can support this vision. First, we would like to identify all the graduates from all the academic years in order to maintain regular contact. We encourage you to spread the word and ask people, LSE alumni people you know, to contact us. We also want to organize social and professional networking events for the local alumni to encourage communication and social interaction, and even hold informal regular meetings where views and ideas about current affairs can be exchanged. Moreover, we think that academic lecture events with LSE academics and key alumni would also be a great opportunity for people to reconnect with the school. And utilizing technology, we could even organize regular screenings of the popular LSE public events that host some of the most influential figures in the world. Last but not least, it would be great for local alumni to be part of the recently launched global LSE initiative called the LSE Alumni Startup Hub that aims to connect the local LSE alumni to a global startup network, facilitating international introductions and connectivity. We believe that stronger relations, both between our members and with the LSE, would be the way for a continuous exchange of knowledge and ideas that will not only further improve the personal development of our members, but also have a real impact on the Cyprus economy and society. We invite all the LSE Cyprus alumni to get actively involved in the activities of the association and promote the much needed engagement for fulfilling this vision. We hope you enjoyed today's event that aims to give us an insight on how Cyprus can benefit from the technology revolution that is really radically changing the global economic and social environment. Thank you.
Well, thank you for those words. I was particularly intrigued by the historical reminiscences of Michalis Karantzis and Elena Constantinou. Let me acknowledge your presentations and start tonight with a small gift. Now, do bear in mind that the gift that I'm about to give you is from the LSE, a public institution, and therefore the generosity should be considered in the context of our public budget. So it comes with a generosity of spirit rather than the vulgarity of material reward. But it is, let me give you two LSE... So it was great to hear those reminiscences and also the exhortation to join the Alumni Association, which I strongly endorse. Let me welcome you, distinguished guests and alumni of the LSE, to this event. I'm very pleased to see so many of you here in this marvelous location. I add my thanks to the organizers and to our hosts and the Alumni Association as well. Your alma mater, because you are mostly LSE graduates, your alma mater continues to thrive. We have a good story to tell in terms of the successes of the LSE, our research, our teaching, our facilities. Let me perhaps emphasize, particularly to Michalis Karantzis, that the campus of the LSE, were you to go to the LSE now in 2016, you will see more than 2 buildings, more than 3, more than 4, more than 5 buildings, wonderful buildings with state-of-the-art technology. And I'm not quite sure how many girlfriends you were seeking to take to Lincoln's Inn Fields, but let me say that for most of us, this would be a generous space by which to host our friends and our colleagues. Thank you. The LSE is also in a period of some transition. Professor Craig Calhoun, the director that you've just seen on the video, is returning shortly to the United States. We have a new acting director, the widely admired and respected Julia Black, a professor of law. She will be taking over this summer. And the LSE, therefore, remains very much in good hands. And by any stretch of the imagination, the LSE that you chose to come to because of the quality of its education remains consistent with those values and with that performance. And indeed, we have an excellent story to tell, not only for now, but projections for the future as well. The focus for tonight's panel discussion goes, I think, to the heart of Cyprus's future. What kind of economic model can Cyprus follow in the European and international economy of tomorrow? How well positioned is Cyprus to exploit the advantages of IT in the new international economy? What are the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, threats that Cyprus faces as it plans to move ahead in this new technologically transformed world? For the current context, I think, is one of seeming contrasts. As we'll hear shortly, no doubt, Cyprus can boast some major successes in IT, but at the same time, the engagement of the wider society and the economy in new technologies appears to be well below EU averages. Cyprus endures some of the highest internet subscription costs in Europe. Reportedly, some 26% of Cypriots have never used the internet. Cypriots seem to use the internet for recreation, but much less so for business, for banking, and economic transactions. So, as we look forward for Cyprus, there seem to be a number of significant challenges. But there are also lessons to be learned from the successes that we'll hear this evening, and from comparisons with other European countries. We can think of the model of Estonia, for example, something of a leader in terms of IT development for its economies. Like other countries, Cyprus has an IT strategy for 2020, but so far the performance and the progress seems to be rather too varied and patchy. There is a need for a more general catch-up. So tonight's topic, I think, with the Alumni Association, is very well chosen, and our panel could hardly be better for this occasion. They can inform us as to the current realities in Cyprus and the best way ahead. Our speakers in this order will be Yannis Karantzis, who is the founder and managing director of iSignthis Limited. He has over 20 years' experience across a number of sectors, including payments, online media, AML. I confess I don't even understand what AML means, but I'm looking forward to hearing more about it, as well as the defense and secure communications. So he can tell us more about IT in the financial sector in Cyprus. Our second speaker will be Zohar Shamir, is CEO of Fularo Holdings and a former director of Viber Media. His previous experience includes being CFO at Fularo, PHTS Telemedicine in Germany, Train Incorporation, the chief assistant in the official state committee of inquiry appointed by Parliament, and senior manager with EY for private and public companies listed on NASDAQ and the Israeli Stock Exchange. Michalis Stangos is our third speaker and is the co-founder of Industry Disruptors Game Changers, a leading organization for entrepreneurship and innovation in the Mediterranean and in the Balkan region. He's also the co-founder of Future Agro Challenge, a global initiative for agro-food innovation running in 65 countries. Last but not least, Andrew Tinney is the group CFO of Wargaming. He has almost 30 years of experience in capital markets, consumer banking and wealth management, and he's worked either with or for many of the world's leading financial institutions, including Deutsche Bank, Barclays, JP Morgan Chase, and Goldman Sachs. So I welcome them and thank them very much for coming. As my colleague Ismini indicated at the beginning, each of them are being invited to speak for approximately 10 minutes, and this should still allow us plenty of time for discussion, Q&A afterwards. So can you please join me in welcoming our panel and our first speaker, John Karantzis.
Thank you, Professor Featherstone. Good evening to you all, in particular Mr. Stelios Kolakasidis, the President of the Cyprus LSE Association, the Observatory team, the Alumni Association, alumni, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me if my voice is a bit hoarse. I've just come off a plane from Australia and I seem to be losing my voice. Thank you also to the sponsors, PwC, Aon Hewitt, Eurobank and the communication sponsor in business. As Professor Featherstone mentioned, I'm John Karantzis. I'm the CEO of iSignthis Limited. I don't expect anyone in this room to actually know who we are, so I'll just give you a quick introduction as to what we do and what AML means as well. Before I do start, though, I'm just going to say that I'm neither an LSE alumni, I'm neither a Cypriot, but I am a Greek. So at least I've got something in common here. But, moving on in terms of what we do at iSignthis, we actually we're an Australian Stock Exchange listed company. We've got an enterprise value of about $200 million, and we offer what we call compliance services, or we're the first of a new wave of technology services called RegTech. So you've probably all heard of FinTech. FinTech is where financial services are delivered to a consumer using technology. We sit behind FinTech. We enable FinTech and give them regulation. So we allow those FinTechs to deliver services through to consumers, be they a traditional financial institution or be they a new early start company. And to describe what AML is, it's anti-money laundering. So it's the process of making sure that the money is clean, we know the source, we know the destination, and we know a lot about the person actually making opening an account or partaking of fintech type services. So we play that rather boring role of making sure that we know who you are and what you do and where your money comes from, and to make sure that everything is, as we say, a little bit above board and squeaky in the financial area. Now, in terms of the technology revolution and what it's all about and our perception of it, well, my background is both as a lawyer and an engineer. I also hold a master's in business, but I'll put on a final hat, which is that of a patent attorney, which I'm also qualified in. And for us, for me in particular, it's all about intangibles. It's about the intellectual property. The digital revolution is all about innovation. It's all about being able to spark new ideas and having the infrastructure to do that. Now, as the CEO of an Australian publicly listed company, I took a rather interesting decision to house our global operations centre here in Cyprus. I'm just going to go through the reasons that I put to my board for doing that and why I do actually believe that Cyprus does have a lot of merit in the digital economy, and why I think in terms of Europe you've got a lot of advantages and up-and-coming ones as well. So, in terms of where we are in digital services, we broadly classify them in two types: the unregulated services such as the Facebooks and the digital media stuff and what have you, and then there's the regulated services. And the regulated services have only recently been up and coming, the fintechs, being able to get your loans online, being able to originate accounts online, doing all those things. It's a fairly recent innovation, and a lot of that has been brought about by the digital revolution. In terms of what we do and how we do it, we provide services to traditional financial institutions and non-traditional ones such that we can identity proof or identify persons remotely. Now, that might not sound particularly exciting, but when you consider that up until fairly recently, the only way to open a bank account in a foreign jurisdiction was to actually go and visit that jurisdiction, or the only way to get access to a stock market or get access to other regulated services was to appear in person, face-to-face, and go through what's called a know your customer technique or identity technique. Or you could alternatively go see a notary and have a lot of documents stamped and post them off, all of which are expensive, time-consuming and so on. What iSignthis has delivered and is delivering to these organisations is a way of identifying people remotely and doing it such that we satisfy regulators. So topically here in Cyprus, I believe that we are the only organisation that meets the exacting criteria for remote identification for CySec, and we are presently seeking our own e-money licence here through the CBC as well. So we've got a bit of involvement here on the ground in Cyprus already. So in terms of what RegTech is and what we do, it gives rise, as I've said, to FinTech. It's an enabling bit of technology. It takes all the cumbersome, all the difficult aspects away from the innovators, from the ones that want to deliver those new and exciting services, be they the lending services or even something a little more conventional like the PayPal of this world. We certainly go out and offer those those basic services to those organisations. Now, in terms of when we started, and I'm conscious of the time here, when we started to look at Cyprus and when we started to put together a rationale for actually establishing ourselves here, we looked at a lot of economic data. We looked at where we would house ourselves within the European Union, and the Global Competitive Index actually did play a factor. We looked at the elements on the GCI, and we looked at what elements of the GCI contribute to what we call the fintech-ready economies. And of that, we found that some aspects of the GCI were more important to others in order to deliver fintech services. obviously institutions, having a financial market that's developed and mature, being technologically ready to a sufficient standard, and having business sophistication. So putting all those together actually does give rise to economies that are fintech ready. The World Economic Forum has basically identified those countries on the right that are innovation countries or innovation economies, and Cyprus happily is one of them. So despite maybe some comments that you may be hearing to the contrary, we do believe that Cyprus has got all the necessary ingredients to contribute to an innovation company. In terms of other jurisdictions that we looked at, we also looked at Bulgaria, because the Bulgarians are out there marketing themselves quite heavily. I'm going to do a bit of a compare and contrast between those and some of the Scandinavian countries, and just to give you a bit of insight as to how we arrived in Cyprus. I don't know whether I'm boring you all or killing you or what I'm doing here, but I'll keep going. So we're all familiar with the current fintech hubs. We've seen them, they're all touted, the London, the New York, the Singapores and so on. They've all got, and Tel Aviv of course, and we all hear about the Scandinavian countries and how they're all up and coming, and they're going to be the next wave of fintechs and so on. So all of these countries have got something in common. They all speak English. They've all got a very robust sort of legal infrastructure, good technology and so on. They've all got the necessary ingredients to become fintech centres. But when we look at Cyprus and we start to map out all the elements that I had on that chart before, Cyprus isn't that far behind the rest of Europe and its competitors. So when we looked at Israel, the actual graph looks pretty much the same. We started looking at Denmark, and Denmark is the best of the lot. So that is the ultimate in terms of your innovation economy in Europe. And then we looked at Bulgaria. And Bulgaria just didn't fit at all. So in terms of innovation and IT readiness and everything else, it just wasn't there. Well, what Bulgaria is doing much better than Cyprus is promoting itself. It's promoting itself very, very heavily. And the number of companies that have been approached to actually base themselves in Bulgaria is quite astounding. I hear of company after company that has been, basically wooed to Bulgaria to go there. And I think what they find as reality might be slightly different to what they've been sold. But anyway. So Cyprus, the metrics there for Cyprus actually aren't that bad. I think they're very positive, and they certainly are very much in keeping with what we've been looking for. So when I actually just put that into numbers, there's a couple of things there that are important. Firstly, for us, the fact that Cyprus was part of the European Union. Being an Australian company, it was important that we get access to the European market, and we get in such a way that we get the benefits of the common market. Cyprus gives us that. Being an Australian company, it was also important that we could understand your legal system, right? So the common law here, the sort of roots back to the UK, the legal system from both countries, also very important to us. It was also important that we got a bit of sun. Well, that's my bit. That was my kicker. Coming from Melbourne, probably the least sunny city in Australia, it was important that I at least got some decent weather from time to time. But looking at all that, when we actually mapped out Cyprus and where it sat, comparative to other European economies, it certainly did look quite attractive to us. So effectively, these are the elements that we put together that made our decision to establish ourselves here in Cyprus. And overall, it was unfortunate, the crash that occurred a few years ago, but it did actually provide companies like ours the skill base, a highly educated workforce, a motivated workforce, that does have that innovation, background, such that we could, with confidence, establish an operations centre here. So that's pretty much where we see and how we see that Cyprus can play a part in the digital revolution. And I certainly don't see any downside from where we sit. And that's probably about us. So I thought I'd keep it short and sweet. Thank you very much.
Is Michalis Stangos.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'm very honored to be here with you. It was quite inspiring, and the video and your speech. I'm an LSE alumni, and I'm really proud of what is going on today. I'm coming from the alumni of Greece, and I'm very glad to see that we, both alumni, are quite active in the last years, and they're doing a lot of things, and the community is growing. And I think there is a lot of room for collaboration and doing things together. And also, as I'm coming from the startup scene and the entrepreneurial startup ecosystem, I'm very interested in what is this new initiative, LSE Startup Hub. I'm here about industry disruptors, and in 1 minute, who am I? I'm an entrepreneur, classic SME entrepreneur, survived the Greek crisis, and 3 years ago we decided to do something in Greece that organically grew in many, many countries, 65 countries until now, to help and support young entrepreneurs and young in the mindset, not necessarily in age, to accomplish their dreams. And so I know the market. I am a real entrepreneur. I'm not a theoretician. And also I have invested in 25 of these startups. And creating this ecosystem, we identify 6 key areas: tourism, ICT, creative industries, healthcare, clean tech, and agribusiness. And under this, we have created a lot of tools supporting networking, creating global competitions that can go abroad and pitch for money, a very sophisticated incubator that we are launching now with all telco companies in Greece. And also we represent the Founder Institute, which is a very sophisticated also accelerator that takes someone in a startup idea in an idea stage, and in 40 weeks you become a company if you survived these 14 weeks. Also, we tried very hard to bring together the researchers closer to the entrepreneurial community. We designed the first bioentrepreneurship MSc, which actually brings researchers to a more entrepreneurial mindset and then takes them out to the market. And we're running very sector-specific global competitions that give access to different networks. On healthcare, we work with Israeli a lot about promoting innovation and bridging different mindsets and bringing a lot of knowledge back from Israeli. And we are also focusing in clean tech, in ICT. And actually what we've seen, I'll skip the metrics. What we've seen is, 99.9% is in Greek companies are small and medium enterprises. 98% is in Cyprus. More or less, it's the same metrics. And imagine that these 4 years in Greece, the ecosystem grew so much. We have good companies, good startup companies, under so difficult circumstances that they produce innovation. The tech ecosystem is growing. You have the first exits of Greek companies. And it's crazy to see that in Greece. And imagine if that is happening there, what can actually happen in Cyprus, that is a more organized state with its difficulties, but much more organized. We are running now on the 4th bailout program. Cyprus is just outside of the only one that she ran for 3 years. And also, it's very pro-entrepreneurial in the sense taxation is solid, and even under this severe crisis, taxation remained solid. It has a lot of issues regarding innovation and technology, but it can be a regional entrepreneurial hub much faster than any other player around the region. And because the mentality is very entrepreneurial, and to that, it's close to the Israeli mentality as well, I think that it's a very unique opportunity for Cyprus in very specific targets on how, I want to show you this actually, on how can fast develop the ecosystem. First of all, the good thing is as part of the European Union, the whole disruption in Greece, it was 2012, when actually the Jeremy Fund were created. And it was only 70 million euros, an EU program, 17% public money, EU money, and 30% private money. That created 4 funds, investing in ICT. And that actually, the 70 million euros, which is nothing, created a vibrant community with a lot of exits and a growing community. So the first thing is the state to work with you to create this kind of programs. The second thing that state can do is help the entrepreneurs, because the mindset, Greece and Cyprus, is more or less the same, and we are very conservative. We don't invest at the early stage. But imagine if the state put some money, which already puts through these SME, small and medium enterprise programs that support entrepreneurs, and instead of giving the 50%, gives the 100% or 70, 80% for companies to come here and develop, not only Cypriot companies, but any company. Of course, Cypriot would have an advantage, and up to 500,000 euros. That would create a disruption in the market. That's how the Israeli ecosystem grew, actually, and is continue growing. And these things are simple because the economy is smaller, you know everyone, you know each other, so it's much easier to work faster. And of course, the private sector has to be on board on this game. I'll tell you an example. 2013, I came in Cyprus as a representative of the Global Entrepreneurship Week, which is a global program promoting every year, every November, entrepreneurship. We're running that with our very close associate and partner, Mr. Georgoulas. And what actually we've seen, and we're discussing with angel investors here, and we had a whole conversation, to put it nicely, about that the young Cypriot talents wouldn't be to their benefit if they go abroad to compete with other more mature startups. In other words, this competition that gives you access to Silicon Valley, to Copenhagen, to Amsterdam, where's the more mature startup ecosystem and a lot of millions of investments are being made, it was a negative approach to an angel investor here in Cyprus, which doesn't make sense. You know, it has to be an open economy, competitive, to give opportunities to these youngsters to go out, take the money, and come here and reinvest them. So also the private sector has to assist on this effort, because there are many on the sector. FinTech is a very well example. FinTech is ready-made in Cyprus to go big. But also in agriculture, a disruption through technology can bring huge change, because there is unique products here in Cyprus. And also in tourism, imagine TaxiBit in Greece changed the whole, I don't know if you know TaxiBit, is one of the most known startups in Greece. And actually what it does is you order through an app your taxi, but also you evaluate your taxi driver. So it changed the whole mindset of what a Greek taxi driver used to be. That's exactly. And you evaluate the driver, and now it's clean, it's polite, he doesn't smoke on the car, he doesn't take you throughout Athens. So these things can actually happen very quickly in Cyprus, and actually Cyprus to become a real entrepreneurial hub. I won't take up more time, we can discuss it later. Thank you.
So, good evening, honored guests, and good evening to my chairman of the board for the past 25 years, my lovely wife, Dorit. Firstly, I want to say that it was a great honor for me to be invited by the LSE alumni to be here with you today. Allow me to start this presentation with a simple statement. No one is perfect. In order to prove it, I will just mention that beside the fact that I'm a certified accountant, I'm also a football fan, and it's really hard to admit. In the next 10 minutes, I will try to convey my thoughts about the potential of Cyprus to be a more high-tech oriented through the football pitch. You will see now a short video taken by an amateur, and the amateur is me. So I do apologize about the quality of the video. Oh, sorry. I need the IT assistance. Yeah, but, oh, here it is. No, I don't see it here on the second. I will try it from here. And yes. Try. Any IT? Yeah, we need to operate this. Oh, back. Oh. Okay. So, maybe not surprising, a little bit. Anyway, I do apologize. It was supposed to be shown, I don't know, it's supposed to see the video, which you can see team attack, which is a team of under 13, doing a counter-attack, a nice dribble of a young player with a double pass, and eventually will score a goal. You really missed it. However, the team that you might have seen is Karmiotissa. Karmiotissa under 13, which is a small team from a small village of Polymedia in Limassol. And the young player, again, you just missed, the brilliant young player is actually my son. Yeah. So, believe me, I can watch this video again and again and again. It's an amazing goal. Anyway, the reason that I wanted to show you this video was not because I'm going backwards. It's not because I thought there will be an agent of Barcelona to give a contract to my son, although it would be a great idea, but because I wanted to show this team as an example. This under 13 team was formed only in last July, and in a very short while they managed to get to the high playoffs of the regular league. At the same time, the professional team of Karmiotissa has managed for the first time in the club history to go to the first division in Cyprus. So, how has a small team from a small village managed to do all of this? From how I see it, it's mainly based on 3 points. One is the right facilities. I did forget to mention that no one is perfect, included that I'm a Manchester United fan. Sorry about that. Second is the right coaches. Third, yes, again, not a very good example. The third is, of course, the hard work of the players. Now, I know that Karmiotissa doesn't have a suitable stadium. However, you can argue this for any other Limassol team. But I did notice that the owner of the club, of Karmiotissa, did spend a lot of money in order to build just near the main pitch several more small pitches just for training for the younger team in order to have the best environment for practice and for training in order to get to the highest point in the future. Regarding the coaches, I was amazed when I saw the first training of my son in July. Until last year, when he was in another club, he practiced, you know, as a real Cypriot. One day yes, one day no. But the problem was that he was convinced, or he was sure, and it actually happened, that eventually on Saturday he will have the shirt of the game because of his basic skills. However, since July, believe me, he ran lots of miles in order to gain the right fitness. And he had two coaches that were in every training, one of them only for the fitness side. And then there was, on top of that, there was another coach that came from PAOK Thessaloniki, just for that team. So 3 coaches just for under 13 team. They were forced, actually, beside running, for the first 2 months, they practiced only defense bases, and were taught how to do it the best. The children, which are the players, came from 3 different academies, and in a very short while they learned in hard work, in discipline, the basis of a strong fighting team. And from there, the success was very, very easy. So you must wondering why you are telling us this story. Well, because I do see similarity between the football pitch and the business world. If we'll go back to the points I've mentioned as Karantzis' under 13 success, I can find the same triggers for the triggers that Cyprus need. First one is the facilities. And in the facilities, I will include the tax environment and the business environment. The second thing will be the coaches. And by coaches, I mean the right managers that will lead the change. Third is the hard work of the players. And by this, I mean bringing more and more students to study high-tech professions. What will be the right facilities for Cyprus to go to the Premier League of the high-tech? For sure, Cyprus needs the government to be focused on this target in order to lead a revolution in the young generation's state of mind. Next month, for instance, we are expecting to receive new tax legislations regarding IP. This is based on BEPS rules, which the OECD has released. One of the major things is that in the year 2020, companies will receive the tax benefits only if the IP will be developed in Cyprus. Now, this is as opposed to the situation today that maybe the IP is being recorded in Cyprus, but the actual development is being done in other countries like Bulgaria or Belarus or even Israel. So the idea is there, but there is a major problem, because if nothing drastic will be done, there will be not enough local workforce to execute this, and companies will face problems to receive these tax benefits. Based on several reports that I saw, in Cyprus, more than 80% from the workforce is categorized as under services sector. You can see it over there. If you will ask a Cypriot mother what she wishes for her child, most probably you will hear the answer, an accountant, a lawyer, sorry, no offense to everyone here, but most likely that you won't hear the word programmer or media buyer or graphic designer. We need to understand, if we wish enough local high-tech workforce in 2020, we need to send the students now. When I have opened the marketing department in 2010, we were searching for media buyers to open the marketing department. Believe me, it was a huge struggle because we couldn't find any. Even the recruiters, were so frustrated that everyone with the word marketing in the CV was sent to us as an expert. Eventually, what happened is that we needed to relocate people from Israel in order to start the business in Cyprus. Today, I'm very happy to say that all of my media buyers, including the graphic designer, are Cypriots. And they're doing an amazing job. And this is because we took fresh students or fresh employees with good knowledge in math and taught them from scratch. Believe me, the enthusiasm was already there. So what can be done? As one of my colleagues already mentioned, and I noticed in some reports that I read that e-skills are still rated low in compared to other EU countries. Just a couple of ideas. Tax benefits for ICT students, participation in higher salaries for high-tech jobs, better marketing of the computer science or programming studies. In Israel, for instance, the Ministry of Education has observed that there was a major decline, a decrease in the pupils that are taking high level of math for their final exam, as we know as A-level. What they did is they launched a campaign through the TV and through other media, encouraging young pupils to take the high level of math and try to bring them to a higher places and position in the future. In France is another example, which is very similar to Cyprus, by the way. There is the same attempt of changing the business sector mix from the big corporates industry and the tourism sector into the high-tech industry. Better tax rates, new governmental fund called La French Tech offering 200 million euros for startups, and banks that are supporting the students. Those are just few examples for attracting wide audience of youngsters and redirect them towards a new market they would not have considered otherwise. So, if we are going back to the points, I want to speak about the coaches. High-tech already has its own unique methods and organizational culture. It's not always in line with the traditional business platforms. I'm not saying that the traditional business platform of managing is bad. I was back at the army, I was a commander of 120 soldiers and staff, and I used hierarchy, and I used discipline, and I used all of that in order to get my targets, and I did, and it's very good. However, in order to have the right atmosphere, new methods of management are needed. In high-tech, the big focus is on the employee, his needs, and about his thoughts. To have the kitchen in the middle of the office full of pastries and sandwiches is something that the employee will feel at home. I'm doing regularly, I'm doing quarterly reviews with each one of my employees. Not the managers, each one of my employees. And this is not because, I'm doing a professional review. This, their direct managers can do. I want a direct channel between any employee to his CEO. I want to hear their understanding of the product. I want to hear their knowledge, what they think about the procedure, about the office routine, about everything. I want to know what are about the points of interest that they have, and how can I combine it and put it towards the benefits of the company. Okay, until a certain extent, because I did have one employee that studied pole dancing. So until a certain extent. Many ideas that managers were not aware of came directly from the employees. Having one department explaining exactly what they are doing to the other departments of the company help all the employees to better understand the big picture and encourage the better integration between the teams. The idea, by the way, came from my secretary, Elena. This was her idea. I heard not once from my employees coming from other business environments that no one listened to their ideas, nor even knew about their existence. So in high-tech, you need another state of mind. So regarding the coaches, I would recommend that Cyprus will bring as much experienced managers in this area as we can in order to lead this industry forward. Yeah, I'm almost there. And for the last point, the players. Trying to redirect people's dreams for the future from being an accountant, or a lawyer, or being in a shipping company, to being in a high-tech employee is not easy. But with the right guidance from the government, better salaries, better tax, attractive company environment will invite the new generation towards the high-tech industry. I'm absolutely sure that the young generation of Cyprus can make this change, the change of the circle of the employment percentage, the one that we just saw. The world is already heading towards companies without borders. Online self-guided and centralized knowledge base, which will decrease the need of the part of the local services companies. However, the need for computer position will only increase more and more, and the future generation of Cyprus must be part of it. We in Cyprus need not just to follow the steps, we need to think out of the box. The right facilities, the right coaches, and the team of players who are eager to win. Albert Einstein once said, logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere. Thank you very much.
So, thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to Zohar for that great introduction to accountants. I really appreciate it as I'm going next. Maybe what I'll try and do, though, is give you maybe just a slightly different perspective on the CFO of Wargaming, or at least on what we do. I want to talk about just two things. In 10 minutes, don't talk about, for me, any more than two things, or we'll all get confused. The first thing I want to talk about is planned reinvention. And I just moved here, actually I moved here last September from Singapore. I first lived in Singapore in 2003, and then I went back to the UK for about 5 or 6 years during the banking crisis. Apparently they needed some help. And I went back to Singapore and, as I say, relocated here. So I was around as the whole of Singapore, which is a completely planned economy. It is Singapore Inc. It is everything is deliberate, everything is planned. And in 2002, they went out there and basically planned how to win in asset management, and particularly wealth management in Asia Pacific. And pretty well, they did all these things. I'm not going to bore you with all of them. I'm sure somebody will make the slides available at some point. But that is planned innovation or planned reinvention. And systematically, that's what Singapore does. Every few years, it says, what do we want to become next? And it has a highly programmatic approach to delivering that. And everyone complies. And it's fascinating to watch. It will be everything from, not enough babies, let's have a whole dating system created in the country. And I mean literally, everything you can imagine is programmatic in Singapore. which, as I say, creates this sort of success. You can see it, the growth in assets under management, and that's despite being in one of the most difficult markets with the financial crisis to boot. So they've done extremely well. So what about Cyprus? And actually, I'm pretty well echoing things that others have said already, which is there are probably, well, I don't use quite the same terms. The country's digital economy, to me, depends on three things: a digital infrastructure, human capital, and institutions/institutional quality. Okay? So if you have the right infrastructure, and you heard somebody say earlier, broadband here costs the earth. That is actually going to be a real impediment without that competition. I occasionally go abroad for work. My allowance from my telco here lasts about 10 minutes before it gets capped out. So what do? I take a different device that gives me a Wi-Fi hotspot, and I carry on forever, and Switzerland gets all the revenue. Just so you know. The reason I make the point is very clear. If the digital infrastructure is not there, if the cost of roaming, not just within Cyprus but elsewhere, is prohibitive, digital services will not develop. It's as simple as that. It's a price point problem for that introduction. Wargaming actually ended up having to put in a specialist facility at one of our residential blocks so that our employees could play games and get a dedicated and committed speed of internet download and upload. Okay? So that just tells you some of the things that we see and that criticality. Human capital, lots of others have talked about it. I won't say any more. Institutional quality, we see. We see some great companies, some great asset management companies. The venture capital talked about earlier. We're beginning to see a lot of that developing in country, but there's still a long way to go. You've seen the other spider diagrams before. I mean, the reality is there are a number of areas where it's falling behind other areas in terms of the digital economy, but I won't go into those in detail. So what's the planned reinvention here? So you saw Singapore, wealth management, we're going after it. This is a lot of what we hear, and I'm sorry the minister isn't here. But the digital strategy, there's a lot of things here that I think can and will help if they are followed through on. But as I say, it's critical for me to see that follow through, and critical for us and this country to see that follow through. Because if these are just words, there will not be that change. So planned reinvention is critical. People talk about it, all the things that are needed. But the other thing that is needed is variation. And one of the problems Singapore has now is it looks like the blue line. That is to say that the education system drives academic success over and above anything else. Conformity is a requirement of living in Singapore. And that conformity does drive out a lot of failures. But what it also does is it drives out success. Because if you never fail, you never succeed. If there is one formula for success, which is conformity, you never innovate. And honestly, Singapore is now struggling with developing the right culture for innovation. They can have all the infrastructure they like, and they have a lot. They have one of the best airports in the world. They have awesome fiber optic infrastructure everywhere. They have an amazing education system for academic outcomes. But they're struggling with the problem that they've driven conformity. So as we think about this evening and about Cyprus, two of us actually made an active decision to dress up tonight. We decided to conform. I have two colleagues here, one Rosita there, who actually helped me put the presentation together. So welcome to my two colleagues. But actually, they will tell you that I normally go to work in jeans and a T-shirt. So I actually had to go home and change to come out tonight. That's conformity. So we start thinking about that in lots of other ways and think about how society can create and celebrate variation. And so that, for me, is the second critical message that I leave with you. And we can talk about startups and all the other pieces that go with it. But I figured, given the sensitivity to how much time we've got left, I want to say two more things. One is just to say a little bit about Wargaming. Everyone has an advert this evening. I'd do my quick one. But it talks to Belarus, because that country was mentioned earlier. So Wargaming really started in Belarus, and through a lot of failures and successes, and by the way, it started as a small company in 1998, but actually really didn't do very much until it made the breakthrough in what's called the massively multiplayer online games, World of Tanks. And everyone said it would fail. Everyone said it would fail. It nearly ran out of money before it was launched. They borrowed the last $20,000, $30,000 to get it to market. It now has 175 million registered users. There are 15 million people around the world who play this game at least once a month. Okay? And developed the free-to-play genre, which is now so common that you buy in-game, but this is actually free to download, and actually for us, free to play and free to win. So, dramatic success from basically 150 people in 2009, now to more than 4,000 in 14 countries in 17 locations. So it can be done. And there was support in the infrastructure, in the environment, but also that willingness to accept and support that variation of outcome, the failures upon failure that ultimately leads to this type of breakthrough success. So I'll leave you with just one small thing, and this is a bit of fun for me. Who knows who sang first the song Torn? Not Natalie Imbruglia. Very good. That is correct. That is the correct answer.
But I saw a man brought to life. Yeah, he was warm, he came around like he was dignified. Showed me what it was to cry.
Can you do the next one now, please? So that was
But I saw a man brought to life. Yeah, he was warm, he came around like he was dignified. He showed me.
Okay, so Edna Swap actually wrote the song and performed it, and you heard the first two versions, which were epic fails. Okay? Actually, with very little modification from the 97 version, this kind gentleman is going to play the Natalie Imbruglia version.
I thought I saw a man brought to life. He was warm.
I tell you that because actually, even quite small changes can lead to dramatic success. Nothing, nothing, everything. Ladies and gentlemen, I leave you with those thoughts.
Well, thank you to the panel for that inspiring set of presentations. I now understand what AML stands for. I understand that the Singapores have a solution for a birth crisis, and it's actually quite enjoyable engaging in that. But also, more seriously, I understand the importance of the right environments, the institutional infrastructure, the right policies, the right coaches, and the right players. So I think that's been extremely helpful. But the lights have gone up, and it's time for your questions and comments on what you've heard. And I'm going to take, if the panel permits, I'm going to take 2 or 3 questions at a time because I'm conscious that we're a little bit short of time. So can I take the gentleman here first, please? Okay, there's a microphone to come to you. Can you just say who you are and if it's a question to a specific person or the panel?
Okay, Can you hear me anyway?
We can.
Okay. My name is Altis Hieromonachou, LSE alumnus, 1997 International Relations, so nothing to do with all of this. But as a person who was in government and quit 4 years ago, and I would like to see what opportunities do exist in Cyprus, I wanted to ask, I think, all of the speakers here, if they have come across, if they have met people in key positions here in Cyprus, in government and perhaps in the private sector, and how optimistic are they that digital technology and all these new opportunities or change the mindset for students to learn maths and computer sciences and all this, how optimistic are they that we will succeed in doing this in Cyprus?
Okay, good, thank you. There is an election on Sunday. We can be optimistic. Could I take the gentleman here at the back, please? Thank you.
Yeah, my name is George Strovolidis. I'm an accountant, by the way. I don't know if I have to disclose my age or not, but anyway, I'm a 79 graduate. Well, going on from especially from the last two speeches, I wanted to say that personally, I'm not aware of many or probably any successful companies or successful national economies who have done it without a vision, because that ultimately leads to strategic thinking, and that's, I think, one of the reasons for our failings has been exactly that, because I agree completely that we are at the bottom of the league. And not only are we behind, but we have fallen behind vis-a-vis former Eastern European countries, but also other countries, e.g. Malta. And I think really somebody needs to sit down and analyze why this has happened. Now, whether it's the political system, whether it's corruption or a million other things, it really needs to be analyzed. And the fact that we are strong in many other areas, and I agree with that, it makes it even more criminal that we're so behind.
Thank you. Perhaps because those two questions seem to fit so nicely together, can we go in the order of the panel of speaking and simply ask you to very briefly address the point about how optimistic Cyprus should be, that people get it and understand the way forward, and also the point about whether there is the right kind of vision related to the point that Cyprus has been falling behind, why, etc. So do you want to start off with any comments on either of those two? You don't have to answer both questions, just pick up what you wish to do. Very brief.
In terms of our dealings with the Cypriot, let's say, regulatory sector and companies regulated here in Cyprus, we have had a very enthusiastic welcome. There's a lot of optimism here. The regulators here, particularly SciSec, have been very encouraging, world-class in terms of their adoption of technology. And it was, to be perfectly honest, quite surprising. So I was expecting a very different environment to what we found here, and we found one that was quite positive. So I do want to put some dampeners on the fact that it's all negative. I have seen a great deal of positivity. And just to answer the second question up here, I can give you an example of a country that has absolutely no vision and has had 22 years of economic success, and it's called Australia. Right? So the only developed country in the Western world with 22 years of success and no vision whatsoever. So believe me, I don't know how they're doing it. I think it's because no matter how hard our politicians try, they just can't get it wrong. So anyway, moving on.
Too much success at cricket as well, but anyway, Karen. Michalis.
Regarding the first question, first of all, I'm from IR as well. I'm a 99 graduate, so it doesn't matter the background, as long, you are keen to find new things to do and to. But actually, in Cyprus, the ecosystem is growing. Now you have Capital Impact, which is an incubator co-working space. You have Founder Institute, which is an accelerator. You have these startup weekends, which you can meet people, exchange ideas, and even, create a team and go and step forward. Step by step is maturing, because if you go to the Capital Impact, you will see that are small and medium enterprises that they just have smaller monthly expenses. But okay, step by step. The thing is that the ecosystem is growing, and there are people now interested on how to move forward, which is important, and you have to assist and to be part of that. Regarding the second question, I don't know if I'm the right, the right person to answer, but what I see the Minister of Finance, I see the Deputy Minister of the President, really young and dynamic people that I think they can, they can have the vision. And Cypriots are well structured and organized, and I think it's easy to set a vision. You are very entrepreneurial. It's true, you are too much oriented pro-services and a bit, conservative on to do disruption, but everything is here. And at the end of the day, everyone should be part of that vision, because each one of us has a small percentage of what it gives to create, this movement. And what in Greece usually happens is we ask for a vision as long as it doesn't influence us, we have to give something to take something in general.
Thank you. Zohar?
Well, I did mention in my presentation a couple of ideas, mainly that there is a need of government guidance. And I hear it a lot, but I don't really accept the Cypriot way of thinking, because everyone keeps telling me, yeah, government is corrupted and we are not doing the right things and everything. I think that Cyprus needs to rethink, okay? Because I do feel, or I don't feel, I'm positive that, the other governments in the world are not, so far from what is going on here. It's just a matter of belief, because I do think that Cyprus can succeed. And I see the young generation, I see my employees, and they have brilliant minds. Just need to encourage, just need to think and encourage the young generation in order to get to this point. And believe me, I was also in a government investigation committee in Israel. And I know things are not so different than they are here. Believe me. It's just self-belief. You just need to do it. That's it.
Thank you. Andrew?
Well, optimistic, yes, for two reasons. One is actually in this new world, it's never too late. And I talked about nothing, everything. That can happen. If you do the right, if people do the right things and the right things are put in place. In terms of the right kind of vision, I ought to say as well, actually the English language and the English legal system, but actually are incredibly valuable. So when I was at Barclays,
and location.
Yeah, and location.
And location.
I oversaw 31,000 people that were offshore and outsourced around the world in more than 20 locations. And the strategic choices that I made and we made about location strategy was substantially based on the availability of that legal certainty and the ability to speak in the global language. It was also true at Deutsche Bank, where I built the first offshore facility in the Philippines, KPO. So that side of it, it's got a lot of the right ingredients. But the other side of it, I do worry about here, and that's the variation piece and why I wanted to emphasize it. Because there is a lot of that social conservatism about what success or failure looks like, that a career as an accountant or a dentist is a good thing, and other things are not for you. If that doesn't change, it will be a real problem, and it will continue to be a real problem. So that's the place I would look most.
Okay, great. Let's take another round of questions.
I don't know if I'm the youngest alumni. I mean, I graduated in 2012, so probably, but I was just going to say that...
I prefer it if we didn't get into the age thing too much.
I was just going to say that we were 10 people, I think, from Cyprus in my year, and depressingly now, 8 are either accountants, doctors, or lawyers. And I say depressingly not because they don't have good jobs. They're all well and in London and enjoying life in their professions, but I do think that these people are offering services, and you need somebody to create something that they can service. And I really think
people should encourage in Cyprus that the dream of the 40-year safe job in the same desk, in the same building, running Excel spreadsheets needs to change, because they are the 10 most brightest people I've seen, my colleagues at the LSE, and they are good, they're in health, they have a good career, but I don't think they're going to offer anything to the GDP of Cyprus in the next 40 years. And really urge your kids, your relatives to just think outside that box, because if our youngest minds are oriented to offering services, we will be offering services to other countries. That was just say.
Thank you very much indeed. Can we take the gentleman on the far side of the room?
Yeah, my name's Demis Michalis. I'm a consultant on creativity, innovation, and leadership. I have two questions for the panelists. The first one involves government. If innovation is to thrive, there's a role of the public sector. 5 out of 7 technologies in the iPhone were generated by the US government. And so was Google's first algorithm. So the question here, and if you look at all the countries of Europe that a couple of the speakers talked about, there is a strong public drive to support innovation. It's not the governments that are doing it, but they're creating what is fashionably called ecosystems. Does Cyprus have this? Is my first question. The second one is mindset. I love hearing an accountant talk about culture, and thank you for putting a song on. It changed the ambiance. But culture, to a large extent, is a collective mindset. Mothers don't like their children to take risks. They want them to become civil servants, doctors, accountants, etc. However, there is no such thing as risk-free innovation. Do we have a change mindset, or do we have a mindset that calls for change that is so fast as the one we would need to get where we might be able to get in the digital age?
Okay, good, thank you. Other questions? If you could pass the microphone to the gentleman at the front. We're going to finish with this round.
Yes, my name is George Julianos. Talking about high tech, I mean, it's a big area, and I wanted to ask the panelists if they think that there is space for something specific in Cyprus for high tech, any specific sector. There's going to be services, it's going to be agriculture, it's going to be, I mean, talking about high tech, but is there anything more specific that you see Cyprus that should be going after, or?
Okay, good, thank you. Any other last questions? Great. So shall we go in the reverse order? Andrew, do you want to pick up on any comments or questions that you've heard?
I do my best to stay away from governments and politics as well. I'm more focused on some Brexit vote on the 23rd of June, because I might need to apply for a work permit. Anyway, in between times, in terms of government, I think government does have a role, but I always think about Concorde, the aircraft, and how much the British and French governments spent innovating, billions, and I wonder what would have happened if they'd spent it or not spent it and let other people spend it. So I think there's a role for government, but I wouldn't personally overestimate it. In terms of culture, thank you, appreciate it. In terms of high tech specifically, there are some places that develop sectorally, but actually what I've tended to see is a lot of ideas bouncing off each other. And something that works in one place may not work in another. And if you try and limit it and create sectoral exposure, I sense that that's quite traditional in the way of thinking about it. I think it's about innovation, and that can bounce around lots and lots of different places, lots of different sectors. And it may be that there'll be some in agriculture, but there may be some in fintech or regtech or in online games. I don't think it has to be in one particular place.
We'll answer to all the questions altogether. I think, first of all, that it must have a governmental guidance. Now, I think when the government wants to achieve something, I think the results can be very, very good. And I will give an example. You mentioned the Limassol Business Forum. So I attended in the last 2 or 3 years this forum. So last year, the main topic of this forum was if and how Cyprus will eventually get out of the crisis that occurred. And this was last year. This year, even one word was not stated about this situation. There were other topics. It means that the topic of crisis, of getting out of the crisis that Cyprus had, was gone. It's not because, no one wanted to talk about it, because it's really gone. Because the government, it doesn't matter if it's this government, another government, but the government actually did okay with a lot of force, from other countries, but Cyprus managed to go out from this crisis. So if a government wants to do something, it can. And this is regarding the public side. On the private side, need to understand that need, and this I think you mentioned, that need to go out from the comfort zone. Okay, no more 40 years jobs. The world is very dynamic today. You have a job 4 or 5 years and going to the next round. I'm very happy, by the way, that my employees still, most of my employees are in the company from almost day one, and they stayed. But there are others that received the education and went to other jobs in London, by the way. 3 of my employees went to new positions in London, all of them Cypriots. The third thing is regarding the culture, how you can do things. Okay, so I formed just a few months ago, and we are starting along with another colleague, the Cyprus CEO Club. And this is just in order to get more ideas, combine thoughts between one CEO to another. And this is how you can leverage your ideas, your success, etc.
Michalis.
Yeah. Regarding the governments, definitely the government can play a role of a facilitator and can boost how things are going. We see that Israel, for example, back in the 90s, no VCs, no investment culture. Yozma Fund was created, it was a governmental initiative. In 20 years, the whole game changed. Estonia. Now Cyprus is signing a transfer knowledge agreement with Estonia. Go back 10, 15 years ago where Estonia was. But it was open to collaboration, it opened the door, brought the experts, American companies to accelerate. So Singapore, planning and the role of the government in planning is crucial. And also is crucial to put some money on the table. Because most of the entrepreneurs, and this part of the world entrepreneurs from Southeast Mediterranean countries are not so willing to invest at initial levels. So it plays an important role. But I was with the chief scientist of Israel a couple of weeks ago, also a very interesting, because he's appointed, but then irrespectively who is governing, who is prime minister, he's doing his job. For 5 years, he stays there, and he just implements a very concrete strategy. So yes, state and the right vision and strategy plays an important role. But he was telling me that this 500,000 that I was telling you before, that is 80% that they give to startups, actually, when it goes after the death valley, that these companies are more secure for big for angel investors and VC capitalists to go and invest. At the end, they end up investing just below 10% of what actually is, you know, the investment in these startups. So to fuel some money at the beginning and to give incentives, it's also very important. Now, regarding the culture, it's not easy. And what is not easy is because when a society is structured, even the new players, that they bring innovation, that they bring disruption, when real business is starting, they have to adapt to the new culture so they survive. So that's another issue to tangle, because Cyprus has a lot of internationals and has a lot of innovation coming. For example, see Wargaming, see Viber. But I'm not sure how much is exploiting this innovation. For example, I was very interested, and I would like to discuss afterwards, because you developed actually an entrepreneurship program because you didn't find the right people, so you had to train them. And this is a very valid experience to make it as a, you know, as a program. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, that would be a very good case study to follow, but I don't know how much it's possible. So culture and the disruption of the culture, which what actually we do, what we say we do, it's a really tough thing. And it takes two to tango, always. So there is the big challenge for Cyprus. The rest is here. And regarding the sectors, we work sectorally. And we identify these sectors based on the EU Strategy 2020, the Horizon programs, also the region and what is, you know, the capabilities of and the talents of the people here. But I agree, disruption and innovation can be anywhere. However, agro-food and sustainability and the fact that by 2050 we're going to be 9 billion people, that we need to feed them somehow, that is a market that needs disruption. Tourism, especially for Cyprus, it's a big opportunity and it needs a lot of disruption. Fintech, definitely. And of course, education and the creative industries, clean tech and healthcare. I think everywhere in that field it's an open playground. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Well, I'm going to be the voice of positivity here. I'm actually going to say that all the necessary ingredients are here in Cyprus. In particular, when I look at the government and, you know, some of the initiatives it does have, we looked at the Northern European countries and what they're offering and how they're trying to promote their fintech hubs. What we saw was a lot of saturation, a lot of activity, high costs, low availability of highly skilled workforce, because everyone's out doing their own thing, everyone's out exploring their own idea, which meant that we, as a fintech, you know, with our own technology that we want to exploit and transfer to a new location and develop in a new location, we couldn't actually get the staff we need. We couldn't get the requisite skill set that we wanted elsewhere. That was particularly problematic in London. You try convincing a lawyer to work in a fintech. It's difficult. Whereas here, you know, contrary to what we might hear, there are lawyers that are interested in working in a fintech because it is a little bit different and it's home for them. You know, so it's a different scenario. There are people here that do have the engineering skills that we need, and we're coming across them. And to my surprise, again, I've been pleasantly surprised. They're highly skilled. We've taken some, and we're taking more Cypriots back to Australia for training, and they're showing us a thing or two. So it's not a case of Cyprus being behind the times. Cyprus actually does have a lot to offer. The government itself, look, my view of government is they should just get out of the way. If they can level the playing field so that there's no disadvantage, that's probably the best thing they can do. The tax regime here is better than most. That's attractive to us as a company, and it will be attractive to others. In my experience, every time a government tries to get involved, and Singapore's a case example, I know Singapore pretty well, it's too prescriptive. It stifles innovation. It doesn't work well. Australia's probably the exact opposite. Our government does nothing. It does absolutely nothing. Let me just reiterate that. It does nothing. And, you know, it works well. On the chart, we were somewhere near the top, and the government does nothing, right? So, you know, whilst I don't encourage that for Cyprus, they probably need to do a little bit more, but don't do too much, because too much can also stifle innovation as well, a la Singapore. But the moral of the story here is, whilst you haven't got that ecosystem hub happening just yet, all the ingredients are here. You've got a highly skilled workforce. You've got that common law infrastructure, which for me as a lawyer was very, very important. I can actually understand contracts and write them, and people get what I'm saying. You know, that's critical. And you all speak English. In fact, when I speak Greek to you, you all answer back to me in English. So I don't know whether my Greek is terrible or whether you're practicing your English, but I'll explore that more over a glass of wine later. Anyway, that's all I've got to say.
Okay. Thank you, John. John, if you can just hold your applause just for one moment. John has mentioned that we deserve a glass of wine, and on the ground floor, we can continue to talk and have the reception. Can I once again thank the Alumni Association? Delighted to hear that it's in such good hands, and we look forward to future collaboration and to hear more about the alumni's success. But before you're rewarded with Cypriot wine, let me invite you to show your appreciation for a very good set of presentations. So good, in fact, that I'm going to give them an LSE present as well.
I want a shirt as well, but no more shirts.
It's not a shirt. I say nothing about the relative value. It's good. Okay. Thank you. We need to go for the wine reception.